All right, everyone, welcome back. Today it's all about Halloween, serial killers, scary stories, razor blades and apples, flying death orbs, and Jeff's super fat legs. So, Chris, it's been a long time since I've been invited to a Halloween party. When we had first moved into this neighborhood that I'm in right now, we've been here for over 20 years. You know, we were all young homeowners and we bonded with everyone in the cul-de-sac. And I would have to say that my social life was, you know, pretty active as it can be, right, back in the day. And so Halloween parties happened all the time. You'd go to the neighbor's house and actually, as an adult, get dressed up and drink and have a good time. And I really love Halloween. I'm going to tell you right now that I love Christmas, but man, I'm going to put Halloween even above Christmas. I think it's just so much fun. And with my love of musicals and my love of getting dressed up, I don't know what you're going to say after that, but I do love the costumes. So I was super excited when an old buddy of mine, the same guy who had the adventure with me, right, where we almost drove straight off a cliff. He notified me that right down the street from me is a winery that's having a really cool Halloween costume contest and a Halloween event. I'm like, all right, you know, this is a good year, man. I'm actually going to be able to put on a costume and drag my ass out there and have a good time. But what costume, Chris? Do I just go to Amazon and just get one of the kind of $30 or $40 kind of half shitty costumes? Although,
Party City,
Chris, would you admit that the costumes on Amazon are pretty amazing these days? I should maybe take that comment back, because you can get a pretty damn good costume nowadays compared to what we were used to. Yes?
Well, I don't think you need to amend your comment at all, because there are some pretty shitty $40 ones on there, right? And again, I think Party Cities are going strictly online,
yeah.
so you can't. So yeah, if you've got a $40 budget, it's probably not great. But no, you're absolutely right, and I guess it's another one of those. You know, this is not a old Saturday morning TV show rabbit hole, but if you click on one of the sub vendors for, let's just say, for, you know, conversation wise, for your and I, our backgrounds, like, let's say you click on this Batman costume that maybe is, let's say it's not $40, let's say it's $99. But before you know it, you click on that, you're clicking on one that's maybe $1,500, right? And it's this full on cosplay.
Right. Oh yeah, good
Batman,
point. Yeah,
Dark Knight armor that looks amazing.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Again, it's like this. And even if you were to tell, you know, try to write that expense off to your wife, but I will wear this for every Halloween for the rest of my life, you probably wouldn't get $1,500 worth of use out of it. But absolutely, costumes have come a long way. Just like I think Halloween itself has come a long way. When you used to think about, because now it's enormous. You know, you talked about how much you like it as a holiday. Again, when we were kids, nobody would have thought of it in those terms. Because even a perfect example, like, did you ever see your parents put on a costume when we were kids? Did your parents ever dress up for Halloween?
You know what? No, not normally for Halloween
right,
night,
not regularly
when
right
trick-or-treating was happening. But many times, I got to say, my parents were heading over to a friend's house or going to a party, kind of like I was just describing, where they would dress up. Like my mom and dad were not at all adverse to getting in a silly costume and heading to a friend's house. So it did happen.
Okay. But did your parents ever dress up and go trick-or-treating with you?
Well, yes.
Did they really? Wow, we're digging in. Because you see that a lot now. You're blowing my hypotheses, because my parents wouldn't have been within 100 yards of me in a costume, trick or treat. Now it's like when I open my door, and you will see entire families dressed.
I mean, look, this was when I was very young, but I have a weird like hyper detailed memory of being 3 years old and 4 years old and 5 years old, which I don't even know what that is. Like we always joke about, I can't remember why I walked into the kitchen, but I can remember dreams I had when I was in a crib in our first house, So for sure, my mom absolutely walked me around. I think the very first Halloween costume I ever had, I was a lion. And I definitely remember having the little plastic pumpkin that you put the candy in that had the little black strap on top of it, the little quintessential orange pumpkin Halloween candy container, and holding her hand and going house to house. And but no, Chris, obviously, to your point, by the time we got to be, let's say, first grade, second grade, pretty young, you were still trusted to go around on your own.
Oh,
which is pretty funny.
Right. And and you would go, and I don't know about you, and then especially if you got a few years old, you would go for hours, right? You would go for blocks and blocks. And that's when eventually I remember the evolution from using some crappy ass paper bag to a pillowcase, right? Because I need something sturdy and that will hold a lot of candy, most of which I will never eat. But I think absolutely, the evolution of that. Yeah, because I remember those too. And we talked a little bit earlier. I remember those costumes that you bought at a supermarket and they came in that box and they had the terrible mask with the rubber band and you could barely see, let alone breathe when you were wearing those things. So the evolution. So again, that's one of my earliest memories. And then as we evolved over time, obviously the costumes, like you said, if you want to spend a few bucks, and even that, if you want to go more than if you want to spend more than 40 or less than $100, you can get a really nice costume. Not a great investment for your kids because yes, you can make the case that, I'm going to bust that thing out every year or every couple of years, where kids, they outgrow costumes and it's not really worth it, right? But you go and you look at, the costumes, the Halloween, the decorations, the houses down the street, 2-3 houses down, there's about a 15, 16-foot skeleton with like these glowing eyes and stuff like that. And it's just like, that's a pretty typical, decoration that we didn't really see in the decorations when we were kids. Were basically, what'd you have? Maybe you had a jack-o'-lantern or two. Maybe there was like a witch in the window or something, some kind of crap like that. But as elaborate as the decorations has become, as elaborate as the entire day has become, right? Because again, the stuff's been in stores for weeks, if not months, and you see that the decorations and the costumes and everything that goes along with it has become. It's probably just a big commercialized thing, right, at this point. But it's a long way from we were trick or treating maybe after we went to our school's carnival, and maybe we won a goldfish, and maybe we were in the cakewalk or something like that. To
the cakewalk, well done, wow.
Yeah.
Nice pull.
Thank you. But you know what I mean? And always the goldfish. For some reason that was considered a prize.
That's right.
Goldfish.
Yeah.
And so, but again, to the evolution to what it is now, this enormous business, this enormous media thing, even to the point you talk about when you're talking about you're going to a party now and it's at a winery. I bet I'm willing to bet that when we were kids, that didn't really happen. Right. I don't think because I think when we started, I think literally when we became of like legal drinking age, and I mean legal drinking age, not fake ID drinking age.
Not Tijuana drinking age, legal drinking age. Yeah.
But I can remember going into bars that would become like, oh yeah, there's everybody's walking, wearing their costumes into, Moose McGillycuddies or Old Ox or something like that. And that I think we were of that generation where that really kind of blew up, right? Because again, I don't remember seeing that. So, I mean, obviously we were in bars as kids, but I don't remember seeing the adult participation that you see now, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's definitely different than what we grew up with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, I mean, the funniest thing that you said earlier was occasionally on Amazon, you will accidentally stumble onto a costume like Iron Man, or to your point, like Batman or whatever. And you can either get the $30 version, which is pretty good. especially compared to the 70s versions of costumes. But you'll accidentally go, I'm sorry, what now? This is $2,000? What is this? And it's like you just said, it's like Paramount Pictures or Disney or Marvel
Right.
Studios, version of cosplay. Now, on that note, let me back up here. I did make one of those purchases, as we well know, right, on the podcast. We had that whole episode where we talked about me having a lifelong dream as a kid, and don't ask me why I identified with stormtroopers, literally stormtroopers, by the way, from George Lucas's standpoint, were no different than Hitler's SS. I mean, these were very thinly veiled references to Nazi Germany. In fact, the blasters in Star Wars are actual German Mausers that have been slightly modified, and that was the actual props used in Star Wars. So I'm not proud, Chris, that I identified with the Stormtrooper, but for me, it was just the costume. It just looked cool. That's all it was. And I always wanted to be a Stormtrooper. I even tried to make a Stormtrooper costume when I was a kid out of foam rubber. It was a failed experiment. You know how that goes. So when I got the chance later on as a grown adult with money, I spent a decent amount of money for actual, whatever actual means, but Stormtrooper armor, right? And it looks exactly like you just walked off the set of Star Wars, right? It's perfect replicas of the original prop. So you can imagine, Chris, this armor is not easy to put on. It is complicated. There are straps. There is Velcro. And as you get older, it gets harder and harder to make that Stormtrooper armor fit. And so it had been...
I've never seen a fat Stormtrooper.
Well, actually, in The Empire Strikes Back, to be a total nerd, there is a fat Stormtrooper. There's a scene where you can tell some dude that was just like one of the Union guys whose only job was to get donuts for the crew. He was told, hey, dude, put on a fucking outfit because we need an extra Stormtrooper. And man, this dude has a beer belly hanging out over that utility belt like you can't fucking believe. It's a pretty funny scene. Anyway, I had to justify this purchase. And Chris, I swear to God, exactly what you said. I literally told my wife, honey, I swear, I'm going to wear this thing so many times that it will actually pay for itself. And of course, she didn't believe me. But Chris, I have worn that thing maybe 30 times. And every time I wear that armor, people absolutely lose their minds and everyone wants to take a picture, and it really brightens up the whole Halloween party. And it's like, oh my God, and me, of course, wanting to be the center of attention. It's super awesome. But this year, I pulled out that giant container out of the garage, pulled out the Stormtrooper armor and started putting it on. And the weirdest thing, don't know why, it wasn't my chest or my stomach or even my arms that had somehow gotten bigger. Weirdly, it was my legs. I'm like, what is going on with my legs? Are my legs huge? What is happening? But Chris, the Stormtrooper armor has pieces that go over your thigh and your calf. I could not get it on to save my life. It looked like I was trying to put on the armor of a 4-year-old as a grown adult. I'm like, I'm sorry. Did my legs just come? I might have to go to the doctor to find out. I mean, that's probably a serious thing. I don't even want to WebMD it because they're going to tell me that I have a heart condition or cancer or something, right? But you'll love this. I actually had to go to the hardware place, or no, the hardware place, Home Depot, and get duct tape, white duct tape, so that I could expand the thigh section and the calf section so that I could fit my fat effing legs into the Stormtrooper armor. But by God, Chris, I did it. We went to the big Halloween shindig, and it was so cool. There were about 600 people there, and everybody is our age, Chris, because it's a goddamn winery, right? So they're all, they've all got their ARP cards. And I was so impressed. Honestly, man, it was a deep pull marathon. I looked around that place and the costumes that these people came up with, there was Lenny and Squiggy, and they had perfect costumes on. The guy had the red satin jacket that Michael McKeon used to wear, and it had the L from Laverne,
Lone Wolf on the back,
and it said Lone Wolf. There you, well done, sir.
Okay.
And their dates were really perfect reproductions of Shirley and Laverne and Squiggy, and everywhere. And by the way, Chris, get this. A guy walks by, and I say to myself, he's got to be Barney Fife. That has to be a Barney Fife costume. I walk up to him, and he's like, "Well, how's it going there, partner?" I'm like, "Oh, my God." It was an absolute perfect reproduction of Barney Fife from Mayberry RFD. And obviously, the guy was told by his friends, "Dude, you look exactly like Don Knotts." This guy was an emaciated, gaunt, skinny little wisp of a man dressed as Barney Fife with a oversized, brown police outfit. It was off the hook. It was so good. But long story short, all I'm trying to say here is,
are you sure you're at a winery?
Right?
Are you sure you're at a winery? You weren't at like Shady Acres retirement home or something like that? But
right. Yeah. Or a fever dream that I had. Yeah.
What was the response to the Stormtrooper? I mean, actually, that's kind of funny because you're fitting the Barney Fife 60s, right? Late 60s, whatever. But Lenny and Squiggy and Laverne and Shirley, sadly, only Lenny, I think, is still alive of those four. In real
Michael
life.
McKeon's the only one left. Yeah, that's true.
But what? So but the timeline of Lenny and Squiggy and the Stormtrooper matches up. That aligns. What was the reaction to everyone else at Shady Acres when it came down to, oh my God, look at that Stormtrooper?
Yeah.
Did you feel yourself? Were you taking pictures with people? But also, I gotta know. Okay, first of all, back up a second. Now, we won't count the quick trip to Home Depot for duct tape. What's the process? Like you said, you go and you get this container out, right? And you've convinced your wife, yes, I've worn it 30 times now. So now I'm not even going to ask what you paid for it initially or what the inflated value would be. But if you've worn it, you've gotten your money's worth out of 30 times. How long does it take to put that sucker on? Number one. First of all, what are you wearing underneath? Do you have to be like, okay, it doesn't fit many clothes. I'm wearing like t-shirt.
So what I'm wearing underneath is so hilarious that when my 28-year-old son saw me, and by the way, my son has worn this armor to Halloween parties that he went to. And in his world, it actually blew minds. Like people, when he walked into Halloween parties as as a teenager wearing full Stormtrooper armor, he was the god of the party. Like everyone was just like, "Please, Lord Master, tell us what to do," because the costume is so stunning compared to what the average person would wear. But no, it takes a while. It's a process. So I'm really good at it, which is sad to say, but it takes about 15 minutes or so, maybe even 20 minutes to dial it in and get it. And so Chris, I have to stage it in the back of my wife's SUV. And then when I get to the event, open up the back of the SUV and just start putting it on in the parking lot. And Chris, this is what I'm wearing. Please picture this, right? The only thing that I can wear on the way to the party is a full black onesie. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like long arms, long legs, a little zipper crotch. I look like I'm in a onesie, right? And it's like Deiter from Sprockets. Do you know what I'm saying? Right? It's this
I know
like
exactly
German
what you're saying.
new wave, super tight leotard,
I
full
touch your
body
monkey.
thing. But
yes,
that's right. Love him. So then please add to that knee-high white go-go boots. So please try to picture me in a black onesie wearing white knee-high go-go boots, because that's what Stormtrooper boots look like. And my son, seeing me going to the party wearing a black leotard with the white go-go boots, it was too much. He almost choked on whatever it was that he was drinking and died, because it was hilarious. So anyway, yeah. So when I got to the party, I mean, it's so cool though, because it does kind of pay off. I have a speaker and a microphone, so it really does sound like,
Of course you do.
you're there, move along, that kind of thing.
Those aren't
And
the droids you're looking for.
I was stopped every 2 minutes for people to take pictures, and people walk up to you and go, "Oh my God, I can't even believe it. This is so incredible." It's fun. I love that stuff. But dude, a wake-up call, man. What is up? How did I get this thick? I don't know. I don't know what happened.
But is it as I know? The last time I saw you, your thighs looked like they're not that I gave them a deep inspection, but is it as uncomfortable? But let's say, okay, so you suited up, you got your armor and your on over your onesie and your boots, your go-go boots. I don't even want to know the process of
That's
buying
right.
the go-go
I know.
boots. I'm just going to let that slide.
That's right. Well, it's part of the
but-
armor, by the way. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's what Ron DeSantis said. But anyway, when is it hot? Is it as uncomfortable? Is it as sweaty as like some of those costumes we wore as kids? Are you like, I got to get out of this thing? Do you have to take breaks, take the helmet off? Do you have to? It would be, but I know you put in an air conditioning system.
I did. Yeah. No, you're right. I knew immediately from the first time I bought it that you would die if you didn't have air conditioning in there. So I bought a couple of computer fans. These are little mini fans, and they're powered by little 9-volt batteries, and they blow fresh air into my face the entire time, and I can wear that helmet for 6 hours straight. However, at this event, for whatever reason, bad luck or whatever, they weren't working quite as good as they should. So I did take the helmet off occasionally. But no, I mean, I figured out a way to make that thing.
You're drinking anyway, right?
I was. Yeah, sure.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
No, that's great because, again, you fit right into that. The costumes now are sophisticated. Adults, I hate to say it, but we would classify both of ourselves as adults. You take it very seriously. It is impressive. I remember, and again, if I were to, same thing, if I were to see, and I've been to Comic-Con, but if I were to be at a winery, if I'd be anywhere and I'd see somebody in a Stormtrooper suit of armor, I'd be pretty impressed. There used to be this guy, and after a while became kind of annoying because he would win all the costume contests at all the bars when we were in our bar hanging out days. This guy was the Jolly Green Giant, and he had the full, from head to toe, he was painted green. He had the hair, he had the like overalls, and he had some kind of weird stilts. So he would walk in and he'd be close to like 7 feet tall. And the stilts had like roller skates. So he had it down, and he would walk in and he would be like the mic drop, needle drop moment when you're having this costume contest.
Yes.
And all of a sudden the Green Giant rolls in literally. But after a while, I was like, God damn it, this guy shows up every year. And this guy's, I've been at multiple bars on multiple Halloweens, and he wins multiple times. But you never would have seen, and obviously, I'm sure it was in some crate somewhere, and I'm sure it had an enormous sort of, a pretty good backstory, probably not as complex and as dangerous as your initial story that we had several episodes back. But again, speaks to the sophistication. And again, because we were kids, it's like you had maybe, like I said, we had those crappy costumes, and then they got out of the box and they got put on a cardboard hanger, but they really didn't have, like I said, there was no stores where you could really go. Like you could go into Target now, or you can go into Costco, for Christ's sake, has tons of costumes for kids that are, again, not bad. They've got the fake muscles, right? How many times when we were dressing up as superheroes would we have died to have because we weighed 67 pounds and we had no muscle? We would have died to have like a suit where I really look like a superhero.
Chris, I can't even tell you. I love the yeah, absolutely. And I love the horrible attempt they made, Chris. You remember, if you wanted to look really accurate, let's say you wanted to be Darth Vader, or I don't know why, but C-3PO or a Stormtrooper back in the day, in the 70s when Star Wars was everything. You could go to a place like you and I used to go to, in a place called Grossmont Center, Fun and Folly, which
Folly had those.
Talked about a couple of times, but it was a gag a gag novelty store that sold magic tricks and masks and fake
You're right.
vomit and whoopee cushions and all that stuff. Yeah, magic tricks. Yeah. And they would have a really, really studio accurate mask of those things. But by the way, fuck you if you want to find the rest of the costume. It was unavailable. There's just like nobody was making it, but it's like, dude, this is the best Darth Vader mask I've ever seen. And now the rest of it is just garbage, right? Like I have to just go, try to figure out how to fucking be Darth Vader. Great mask, by the way. But good luck,
but
asshole.
I'm gonna wear it with a tracksuit, right? And maybe I'll put a piece of cardboard and get some buttons because that's all you had. Your Stormtrooper mask is probably not much different than those masks, but you're right. You couldn't get armor,
right?
You couldn't get anything, even the gloves, even remotely close to complete the costume.
Oh God, no!
Right? And I remember you see, and again, and they also the cost, if I remember. Again, at the time, it was probably like $50 or $75, which was enormously prohibitive for us at that time, right? I remember even seeing those. It's like, oh, you're going to save up for something like that. So again, you'd see those in the back of like Starlog magazine and stuff like that, and that's where they would be selling those if they weren't, because you could buy them, right? You could order them through the mail, not on the internet, obviously. 6 to 8 weeks for delivery, blah blah blah. But you're right, the costumes, like the masks were great, but don't, you got your shit out of luck. Wear it with a robe. You could be Darth Vader on vacation, maybe, or something like that, because you were better.
That's all I could figure. Yeah. I know. Like seriously, good luck. You're gonna make Stormtrooper armor out of what, pal? Out of what? And what are you gonna reference to make it? And what material do you believe you're gonna use, Mr. Badass in the 70s? Yeah. By the way, we. Chris, I mean, this is obvious, but we only had the movie and maybe a videotape later on to look at if you wanted to reference something for a costume. And I remember, no joke, in 7th or 8th grade, somebody saying to me, Stormtroopers, those things aren't even real. Obviously, they just use dolls. I'm like, what? Like, that's how disattached, that's how unattached the person's mind was from reality, because you see it on screen and they just think it's a Ray Harryhausen movie with like the Golden Voyage of Sinbad, where
stop motion
troopers were somehow stop motion. Yeah. But I mean, that's just how the human brain works. It's like, obviously nobody could have that kind of armor. They must have been dolls. It's like, my God, is that how your critical thinking works? What? I'm sorry, what?
That is amazing. That is amazing. The costume, the costumes have come a long way. I mean, again, it's become a universal sort of, again, holiday for not just kids. I can remember, again, it just sort of, I don't want to say it happened overnight, but it's enormous now. And you see it, you almost feel like if you're not wearing a costume, will you wear your costume? Okay, let's ask now you could go trick or treating and somebody will be wearing a costume. The dad will be wearing a costume, or the whoever is answering the door. Will you wear your Stormtrooper costume on Halloween? Will you give out candy dressed as a Stormtrooper?
I have done that in the past. I will probably do that this year, only because I just opened it up and dialed it back in and got my giant tree trunk fat legs to be accommodated by it. So yeah, and I mean, honestly, little kids, as you can imagine, right? It's the same as I was at their age, and we're lucky enough to be in a neighborhood where we do get, I would say 70 or so kids that do come by. Some years it's better than others, but yeah, I probably will, Chris, because kids just love it, man. They just think it's the coolest thing ever. And I love Halloween so much that I actually always do some kind of a special effect. I usually have holographic ghosts or some kind of a projection effect or something, just to make it extra fun for someone, I don't know. I get a kick out of it. It's cool. Or not cool. I don't know. You tell me.
I mean, I can remember that. And sometimes, again, you'd have your neighborhood houses that would maybe maybe they're the house that would have a haunted house kind of thing. Maybe they would do a haunted house. I remember those in their garage or something, or you'd have to walk through a little kind of mazy thing to get and earn your candy. And those were okay. And those were fun. Some of the little kids would be too afraid. But how about, did you have a house that you didn't go to? Was there a house? Do you remember a house that because I can remember one specifically where flat out, no, they're not participating and the lights are off and they're actually not happy about Halloween in the regards of go away, kids. They're yelling at people. Did you ever have any houses like that? Rather than just not answer the door or go to the movies or something, they want to be confrontational with these kids in the neighborhood, right?
Yeah. Well, no, for sure. Our neighborhood when I was a kid, again, we talked about that street, right next to the high school and my grade school. And there was a house at the end of the little street there that these were mean people. They would notoriously, if you kicked a ball into their backyard, they would pop it and then throw it back over the fence. They famously had my next door neighbor when he was on a big wheel, right? He must have been 5 years old. He would ride his big wheel around their driveway and then go back to his house and just kind of do a little circuit, back and forth. He accidentally drove his big wheel into their garage because it was open. They shut the garage, locked him in there for 4 hours. 4 hours.
What? That's kidnapping.
Where he's screaming and crying and no, for sure, 100%. And screaming and crying, and the parents are freaking out, trying to find him. And dude, literally, cops were called. And it being the 70s, at the end of the day, it's well, this is just a really cranky lady, and don't ever do that again. And she just didn't like kids on her property. And somehow, miraculously, they didn't end up in prison for Amber Alert kidnapping. But yeah, that was the haunted house of the area, right? That was the place where we all thought, oh my God, it's those people. And so, yes, Chris, what a shock, right? On Halloween, the house was dark. And but here's the thing, what I love the most, kids of the 70s oftentimes don't put up with that shit. So a lot of kids would purposely walk up to their house and bang on the door and ring the doorbell 1,000 times.
Nice.
They were even kids, throwing eggs at the door. And normally,
I can imagine,
I would say, oh man, that kind of sucks. But with these people, I'm like, yeah, fuck you. Right? This lady was I don't know, she might have been the Alpha Karen, as far as I can tell, the original.
The mother of all Karens. There was a house, and I want to say, and maybe somebody listening, maybe somebody will let us, there was, and I don't know if you remember it, I want to say it was in Allied Gardens, okay? Or I want to say it might have been even on Old Marjoram or some street like that. There was a house that had a hearse on the driveway, a bona fide hearse. And I can remember all the people going by that house all the time. You'd drive by it just on a random Saturday night. But at Halloween, nobody would ever approach that because that hearse never moved. It was not oh, the hearse is gone. Oh, it's come back. It's not like that. They had a house. They had an extra car on their driveway. It was a freaking hearse. And it was just you know what? I don't know what goes on in that house. I'm not even going to try to find out. But there was also, as far as I can tell, we didn't have any children kidnapped and locked in garages. But the house, the very first house that I lived on, street that I lived on, there was a Mr. Wilson kind of character who hated everybody named Mr. Thompson. And he would put a sign up basically saying, there's no candy here, don't ring my doorbell. And yes, so of course everybody would ring the doorbell, right? Just to piss him off.
I love it. That's my favorite part of the 70s. I love it.
And this is the guy that also, we're playing in the street, right? And we're throwing a football around, and what happens? You see a car coming, so what do? You say, car, right? And everybody kind of gets to the side. Well, you had to say, when Mr. Thompson came up in his brown Cadillac, I swear to God, it was a brown Cadillac, would speed up. But fortunately, that thing was so goddamn big, you could see it as soon as it was coming around the corner. It's car, and everybody would scatter. It's Thompson, old man Thompson. And everybody would, because he would speed up. I swear to God, he wanted to run somebody over. And he didn't pass out candy. He had an angry note about it.
Yeah.
And he tried to run us over. So I guess that was about as bad as kidnapping, because I guess there he would have had an alibi. right? Maybe, so maybe it wasn't as bad, but yeah, those are legendary, right?
You hit on something right there. By the way, Old Man Thompson sounds like the beginning of a Stephen King film, right? That sounds like the opening to a Stephen King movie. But the hearse, I think, is so interesting because back then, you're right. We saw so many movies that were so scary in the 70s, and a hearse was a big, scary omen, right? Of just like, oh my God. Nowadays, if someone had a hearse parked in their front driveway, not only would no kid give a F, but if anything, they'd be like, "Oh, cool car," right? It wouldn't even. I don't believe it would even register. And by the way, I mean, I would literally start singing that song that my mom used to jokingly sing uh, when she was a kid about the hearse. Do you know the hearse song? The scary. Did you ever think when a hearse goes by? Did you ever hear that song?
I don't think so. Doesn't sound familiar.
It's like a nursery school song, so it's really creepy. Here you go. Did you ever think when a hearse goes by that someday you're doomed to die? They roll you up in a big white sheet and throw you down about 6 feet deep. The worms crawl
Holy
in,
Christ.
the worms crawl out, the worms crawl in and out your snout. Your bones begin to rot and decay, and you are in a vast dismay. Vast dismay. That's pretty high-end literate for back then. Vast dismay. Anyway,
And you
scary.
remember it word for, I don't, I do remember the day that I found out that,
Yeah.
Ring Around the Posy was about scarlet fever. But that's creepy. That's really creepy because there's a
Very
lot
creepy. Yeah.
there's a lot of detail, I mean, it wasn't that far away, it wasn't that long ago, I should say, when my daughter asked me about, there was a reference to 6 feet under, and she didn't know what that meant. And so I told her she's like, well, when you're in a cemetery and you're put in a coffin and they dig a hole and they put it 6 feet down. And then she was like, why? And I'm like, shit, I don't know. Just because, maybe because it's harder for the zombies to dig out of 6 feet holes or something like that. Grave robbers, I don't know, right? But that is a hell of a lot of detail. What you were told, that limerick or song or poem or whatever the hell that thing was. Awful.
Well, I mean, it's
Horrifying.
like a Grimm's fairy tale or any nursery rhyme back
Okay.
then. They were so creepy. I mean, even nursery rhymes back then, they're just like so morbid and weird. But 6 feet deep, I mean, I'm not looking at the Google right now, but I mean, for sure, one of the reasons you would bury someone 6 feet deep is so that animals and predators wouldn't dig you up, right? You were
Okay.
deep enough that
Yeah, and
you were
grave robbers
probably
or
going to
whatever.
be safe.
Yeah.
And then grave robbers, totally. Yeah. My favorite story, and I think we might have mentioned this, was the dead ringer, where that expression came from. Do you know that? Dead ringer?
No.
So, and I'm not quite sure the connection in terms of today's version of dead ringer, but back in the day, it was not uncommon for somebody to fall into a
Oh,
coma
Christ.
like state, right? They might have eaten something weird,
Mhm.
drank something weird. Oftentimes, mead or drinks that they were drinking were tainted. So they might go into a coma where their heartbeat is barely beating, right? And that was the reason why they had a wake. A wake was put the dead body on a table and let's wait a few days just in case, Chris, I'm not joking, they wake up
They woke up.
because they weren't really dead. And there was a time when people would get buried and they were not dead. We just didn't know that they were in a coma or some kind of a state like that. And so in some instances, they would put a string inside the coffin and they would have some kid, posted out there by the cemetery, and they would put a bell above on the ground above. And sometimes you would have buried someone for 2 or 3 days and ding, 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 right? They're pulling on the string and you gotta dig them back up again. I'm not kidding, man. That actually happened.
How the hell am I supposed to go to sleep tonight? Now that you put all of that into my brain,
Right?
thinking, God, I hope I I hope I'm not in some sort of suspended state and everything's, oh, well, he's dead. But we'll let him lay here. I mean, you hear these weird legends, urban legends, maybe of yes, people waking up, or we've seen the movies where somebody claws their way out of a grave, which to me, I don't know about you, and we have this discussion. I think if you were to ask me what's possibly the worst, if I had a fear, what do you think the worst way to die to me, without question, would be buried alive. When
Oh, yeah.
kind of done, when everything's cascading down on you and it's like pointless and you're just you're digging through and you're choking and you're going to run out of the oxygen. I mean, to me, or you're in a box, those movies where you wake up in the box and you're like, oh shit, I can't get out. And that's it. That to me, absolute 1000% worst way to die. So
100%, man. I am so with you. And Chris, I have to do it because we gone down the road here. But the reason that they started putting a string inside the coffins that you could pull on so that you could alert someone that you're still alive is because sometimes when they would have to relocate cemeteries or exhume the grave, what they would see inside the coffin is scratch marks. People were literally trying to claw themselves out of the coffin after waking up. Everyone thought they were dead. Dun, dun, dun. So scary.
I've heard variations on that. Like their fingers are all dried blood because they're scratching them raw or something like that. And again, that just freaks me the fuck out. So thanks very much, Jeff, for all of that interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
I know they didn't bury people with shoes because when they had an open coffin, it was only halfway open and you wouldn't see their feet. So they think, well, why are we putting shoes on them? Right? Like that famous picture of the Beatles walking across Abbey Road where they're trying to say, George Harrison is a grave digger and Paul is dead because he's wearing a suit and he's not wearing shoes. Right? And Ringo is the Undertaker. And I think John Lennon is supposed to be Jesus. I think that's the sequence. But I did know that they don't put shoes on somebody. I don't know if they still do that. I'm all for cremation.
Yeah, me too. No, I'm with you, Chris, 100%. Yeah, I think nowadays it's just such almost a pretentious, assumption that, hey, I want to have my body in a coffin and waste real estate and have this little area. It's like, really? So yeah, I'm all for being cremated. I will say I'll go the extra mile and ask my surviving relatives to maybe spread my ashes somewhere. That would be kind of cool. But that's the farthest I'll go. Yeah. Because in a couple generations, no one will remember you anyway. So I hate to say it, but that's the truth.
And that's an even better argument for the non-oxygen. Because again, if you're maybe...
On that note, Chris, no, I'm kidding.
That's a better argument for not clawing your way out of a coffin if you're a pile of ashes, right? I think that makes it even better. But so that, I don't know. So again, I think of all of those, like I said, that some of those are kind of urban legend kind of things. Halloween lent itself. And again, and I think for us, definitely for our generation was the candy, right? And the poisoning of the candy and putting razor blades in the candy and all of that thing. And supposedly there's not one documented case that ever happened, right?
I believe that.
And first of all, I never got an apple. I never got fruit of any kind, I don't think. But I mean, it's the urban Halloween sort of lent itself to all of those. And again, with these scary neighbor, houses or whatever. And, it just reminds me of all the different, again, the way my older siblings can scare you or the things that you used to hear, these legends, the movies. To me, the scariest movies, and so many of them came out in the 70s, 80s. And we've touched on these a little bit. They all all the supernatural. To me, I could watch any movie that would be like, if I'm being chased by if Alien is a great movie or Aliens or whatever, I don't consider that scary, right? If the shark in Jaws, scary, but it's like, yeah, I'll just stay out of the ocean, right? But to me, and I think these are the things, like the supernatural stuff was genuinely scary. So you had, like we talked to the aforementioned Exorcist, or you had The Omen or Rosemary's Baby, or any of these kind of films that were the supernatural that had to, and I think the devil was big back then. I don't think Satan's as big as he used to be, But the devil was always just like, man, that is your go-to villain, right? Demon,
Yeah.
devil,
Yep.
possession, Amityville horror, poltergeist, whatever you wanted to throw into the mix. And that shit was kind of scary to me, And then that even led to the slasher films, that again, especially that had that sort of supernatural bent to them, or a character like Halloween. For my money, hands down, I don't know about you, the scariest, if I had to pick to one movie that scared you, genuinely scared you, it was Halloween, right? Because it was this relentless slasher, like emotionless sort of, and they developed a backstory, was a little bit supernatural, and then he got away at the end, right? Holy crap. What could be scarier? He didn't get blown up. He didn't get incinerated. He didn't get his head chopped up, although I think that happened in every subsequent sequel. But to me, it's like that was the shit that was really, really scary. And like I said, Satan was always, and again, we made jokes. Remember the satanic, the Led Zeppelin albums, you could play them backwards and you hear stuff about Satan was huge. Satan was a part of our childhood, regardless as if you were religious or not.
Yeah, no, and we talked about this, and I think when we talked about the scariest movies that we'd seen and what really frightens us, and you're right, Satan was a big theme back in the day. Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess, for me, the things that really creeped me out were things that weren't, bloody or gory. It was stuff that was just like extra creepy or made you really think, right? That was normally the stuff that really psyched me out and freaked me out until I saw a classic bloody movie that blew my mind in the wrong way. And that movie, and I'll give you a hint here, Chris, and I'm sure you're going to jump in very quickly on this one. This one absolutely scared the F out of me. And imagine a silver orb that could hover and fly through free space, and it had two giant claws on the front of it, and it would embed itself into your forehead and then start drilling into your forehead. Do you remember this movie?
I think you're talking about Phantasm.
Yeah? What is it?
Sounds like Phantasm to me. I don't know any other. It was either Phantasm or Out of Africa. I can't be sure, but I'm thinking it was, Phantasm. It had like some 7-foot tall dude, right, who wore like that hat, or something like, yes, scary as hell. Scary as hell. Can't sleep when you're watching a movie like that. Don't want to watch a movie like that alone, right?
And the story itself was so bizarre. And by the way, you're right, because it was, of course, about the devil. And the catch at the end was, this 7-foot tall, gaunt, scary looking, almost like a caretaker character was, my recollection was he was somehow just from a different hell dimension, and he was collecting people and sending them to hell. And there was some other dimension where there were these dwarfy characters, which my history with little people is not good. And oh my God, it just had all the earmarks of Jeff, stay away, do not watch this. Yeah, super, super scary. In fact, I was so afraid of hell when I was a kid that there was a Night Gallery episode that started out with Sonny Bono, as I recall, was the actor in the Night Gallery episode.
Oh, wow.
And he's a hippie, and he's wearing all the normal hippie outfits with the go-go boots and the whole weird crazy thing and the purple.
Did he have a vest with fringe on it or something?
Everything.
Yeah.
Very Sonny Bono. And somehow he's drunk or stoned or on LSD, and he drives off a cliff, and he immediately goes to hell. But the sequence for it is not what a kid is ready for. I turn on the TV, my parents aren't home, and you see him falling into the chasm of hell after he has somehow gone off a cliff. And Chris, as you know, I've almost gone off a cliff multiple times as a youth. So this had special relevance for me. And there's all these hellish demons that are like, hell, welcome to hell, and it's like, it's so cheesy by today's standards. But as a kid, you're like, oh my God. just blew my mind. And at the end of the day, it actually ended up being one of the funniest episodes because he did go to hell, and his version of hell was he was stuck in an antique shop and he couldn't leave it. And there was an old man going, well, let me tell you about the time that we had the Great Famine of 1849, and he had to sit there as a hippie listening to an old man spin yarns about a bunch of nonsense he could give a shit about. And the guy would, and Sonny Bono would say, what about the Beatles, man? Don't you listen to music? Beatles? I remember the great beetle infestation. It ruined all of our crops. So at the end of the day, it was kind of funny, but dude, the imagery and the hell thing, and you're going to hell. Oh my God, the 70s really had a lock on that type of imagery.
There was one of the best, I don't know what I could say, representation, dramatizations I ever saw of hell actually came in, I don't know, what was it, 89, 90, whatever. I don't know if you ever saw Ghost, okay? Remember Ghost with Patrick Swayze?
Oh, yeah.
And Demi Moore. And at the end...
Oh, Chris, that's a great example, man. That scared the F out of me for such a silly movie, yeah.
But they did a phenomenal job because he gets the bad guys who then like, hey, they're bad, they're going to hell. Like, he's going toward the light, and then these like shadows kind of, and they're just making the sound, and the other guy, and they're screaming. And it was like, holy shit, I didn't see that coming. It was like, we're going to throw that in right at the end. It's like, yeah, these guys get their punishment. They're going to hell, and we're going to show you how they get there. That freaked me out as an adult. Thank Christ I didn't see that when I was like 10, right? That would have been something else.
Oh, yeah.
Because again, you didn't go to like, as someone who was raised a Catholic and who spent a few years in Catholic school, we won't get into that too much, but then who still had a Catholic education, and hell's right up there, right? And they don't care, and you hear the basis of like most religions, like you're built in with sin and guilt and all these kind of things that you have to confess to. And when you're like 9 or 10 years old, you're not really doing too much that you have to confess to. But then it's put on the same sort of level as is like, you will go to hell if you kill somebody, right? Or if you do something of that nature, or you kill yourself or whatever. There's all these sort of like, but it's so broad, and they have to make it, because you can just basically, the sensible guy go, well, I'm not going to kill anybody, so I don't worry about hell. But it's like, but wait, you know what I mean? You have to be a really good person. You have to like build a resume, like a spiritual resume, to keep yourself out of hell. And right, and we all have that, and the imagery was always that, yes, big pit, right? And there's fire, and there's people screaming, and it's hot, and people would dress as the devil on Halloween, right? Sometimes you see some girl dressing like a cute, some cute girl in a devil costume. It's like, okay, whatever. But that whole, like I said, we were raised with that, where it's just like the idea of hell, when you're still convinced that there is an afterlife, and you got to be a good person, otherwise you're going to hell. And it's not an antique shop, although that would have probably, for a lot of people, for a lot of hippies, for Sonny Bono, apparently that was his, maybe for hell. For me, it'd be sitting through the opera again. I'm not quite sure. But that kind of, like I said, that was a driving sort of, and we can go back to literature, right? And you want to go into Paradise Lost or whatever you really want to talk about. But those sort of thematic things of like, that's pretty effing scary. And we were raised to be, right, scared of a lot of shit, that including, and maybe it's not as big. Satan's not as big. Nobody talks about Satan as much. Nobody tries to play, songs on streaming songs backwards. I think maybe we got that past us, right? I would say thank God, but I didn't try to be ironic.
Well, yeah, exactly. And later on, hopefully you grow out of that and you realize human psychology and, the reasons why hell was originally brought up. We won't go into that. We've always been really good on this show about not delving too much into politics or religion, but human psychology 101, right? Scare people into believing that if you don't listen to what you're telling them what to do, they're going to somehow be punished forever. Great technique. That is kind of like sales 101, create the fear, create the pain. And the Catholics and other religions definitely have that down pat. But That doesn't change the fact, Chris, that I don't want a silver orb flying around and embedding in my head and putting a drill through my brain. That was scary as fuck. So yeah.
I don't want to hear from any demons. I don't want to be in a coffin with a string. I don't want to have to scratch my way out. I don't want to wake up in the middle of a party where everybody's telling jokes about me. So yeah, you've given me a lot to think about. I appreciate that. But in the spirit of Halloween, see what I did there? Spirit of Halloween. That's that store where they sell all that shit. Yeah, I mean, I think lot to contemplate, lot to think about as we head. And I don't have a costume yet for Thursday. I've been told I need to come up with something for a family kind of thing, if you can believe that. So I've got a few days.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Are you going to a party or what's happening?
Nah, it's just not specifically, but neighborhood stuff and all that kind of thing. So I don't know. I don't think I could drive out to your house and rummage through your closet and come up with your, I don't know, Sigmund and the Sea Monster costume or something like that. But don't have time for that.
Man, it's pretty nice.
So I'll end on this then. It's like when you think about it, because we've got the giant bag that just got cracked open, your favorite Halloween candy, the favorite thing that you pulled out of that bag going, yes, I got 4 of them. The ones you wouldn't share, the ones you hid, the ones that you hoarded. What is that favorite go-to Halloween candy for you?
Yeah. So for me, it was pretty simple. It's anything chocolate. I was pretty down with that. If you were to get a bite-sized Snickers, I would. That was pretty amazing. But my favorite was a very weird one, and we may have mentioned this before. Please don't ask me to explain why. The most coveted Halloween candy for me is a piece of banana taffy. I don't know what it is about that artificial banana flavor, but I loved banana taffy, and I would trade a little tiny piece of banana taffy if I thought I could get my hands on one or stick one in my mouth, frankly. Dude, oh my God, I would trade almost anything for one of those. I don't know why.
Do you have to go trick-or-treating in Dodge City or something? Like, where the hell, who's passing out? Does that cover the general store?
I know. You would think I was at Farrell's ice cream parlor, but no.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, that's right.
That is hilarious.
Yeah,
I guess I'll
that's
just
my favorite, though,
stick
banana
with
taffy.
Just give me a Reese's peanut butter cup all day, all night.
Sure.
I can have somewhere between 3 or 40 of those at one time. And
right.
That's
Amen.
my go-to candy. And it's definitely, but I'll have to look for that banana. I'll have to go through my daughter's bag and see if she comes up with any banana taffy.
That would be hilarious. And then, of course, Chris, my second favorite is the giant orange circus peanut. That's my favorite.
Oh,
I love those. The big spongy circus peanut.
What the hell? That is just
the key to a circus peanut, Chris, is you have to give it time to absorb the flavors of all the other candies. That's what it's in there for, right?
How much time? 6 months? A year?
It's like tofu. It just sucks in the aroma of, and then you want to leave it out in the sun for as long as you can. So it gets really, really hard. And it just becomes almost like a shamrock shake that you leave out, in the outdoors for a while. It becomes this little hockey puck of condensed material. So then the orange circus peanut is ready to be consumed. And there's a lot that goes into it, but man, that is delicious. No, I'm kidding. Those things are fucking hideous. Horrible.
I can't take credit for it, but I saw somebody making that comparison saying that candy corn, which I'm not a fan of, but the candy corn gets way too much flack compared to the orange. Because you can find people that will eat candy corn by the handful, but nobody's ever going to say, oh yeah, give me all your orange circuit peanut sponge looking tofu crappy thing every day of the week.
Well,
so
I love candy corn. So, well, there we go, man. We went in areas that we did not think we'd go to, and areas that we knew we would. And by God, I wish everyone out there a fun Halloween. I hope it's edgy and weird and scary. And I hope that something happens to you that makes you think and go, my God, whatever that is. But Halloween is a great time to have at least one little minor freak out or watch a movie that you're uncomfortable with, or just to push the envelope in some way. So happy Halloween, everyone out there.
Happy Halloween.
What do you think, Chris? Until next time.
Till next time, Jeff.